Alhamdulillah wa sallallahu wa sallam ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Alhamdulillah, we've reached towards the end of the book of Sawm and the book of fasting, and so now we're going to talk about a last thing which is connected to fasting in a way, as in it's connected to Ramadan, or it's something that's normally done in Ramadan, so it's added at the end of the book of fasting because it has that connection to it. And oftentimes the two are done together, so this is also a good place for it to come in there. And this is the chapter of i'tikaf. And i'tikaf, like linguistically, i'tikaf means like staying. It's one of it is like akif is like someone who is staying in a certain place for an act of worship. And so like these, so i'tikaf is like making this. It's like staying in a place with the intention of worship. And this is normally, like, this is when it comes into the Sharia, and like when we talk about it, and other than a linguistic term, but in its actual like Sharia term, then it would be considered like staying in the masjid with an intention, with the intention of worship. And so, like this is something that is just spending that time in the masjid. And so the author here, as many other like authors will do, they'll put it at the end of the book of Sawm, and this is because it's a good place to put it. Because at the end of Ramadan, this is a time when it's normally encouraged to make i'tikaf, which is looking to find the last of like in the last 10 nights, we're looking to find the Laylatul Qadr. As we talked about. And I think in the last a couple classes, last 2 classes, I mentioned Laylatul Qadr. And Laylatul Qadr is a day that is, we don't know exactly when it is. That's one thing. And there are many hadiths that come around it, and these hadiths point to they point to certain things. One is that it's probably on an odd day. And we know for sure that it's in the last 10 days because the Prophet ﷺ, he used to make i'tikaf. He would make it the whole month of Ramadan, or he would look for it in the whole month of Ramadan. Then later on, then he only did it in the last 10 nights. This points to the fact that it's only in the last 10 nights that Laylatul Qadr is, because he would do it in the last 10 nights to make sure that he got the Laylatul Qadr. And then and there's a hadith that the Prophet ﷺ, he found out about the like what night Laylatul Qadr was, and then he was coming out to the people to go teach them what is this night of Laylatul Qadr. And so when he came out to teach the people and tell them what the night of Laylatul Qadr is, he found some of the Sahabi were arguing. And some of the Sahaba were arguing with each other, and there's some kind of bickering and fussing in the masjid. And then he like because of this, he was caused to forget the night. And this, of course, this is from the qadr of Allah, that Allah decreed for him to forget this. And it's not something that we need to know. And if we needed to know it, then this would not be something he would forget. But they caused him to forget that night, and so he didn't tell them. He told them, "I was going to tell you guys what this night was, but then like after all of this bickering and whatnot, like Allah caused me to forget this." And so we know that there is a night, of course, that is there, and this is also mentioned in the Quran, and it's also in the last 10 nights from hadith that come, and also looking for it in the odd number, the odd number of the 10 nights of the last 10 nights of Ramadan. So we'd look at it in the odd numbers in here. So we'd have like the 21st, the 23rd, the 25th. This is like more probable. And then also in the 27th, this is also there's hadith that come in this. If someone is going to like only do one, if they're only going to stand for one night and whatnot, they should stand for at least the 27th. And this points to the fact that this is a high probability of that. And like to say it's the 27th and it's not any of the other nights, this needs more evidence. And also because there is evidence that it happened on other nights other than this, and there's also evidence that maybe it happened on a night that wasn't an odd number night. And this is something that Allah knows best. And so of the strongest opinions is that this is a night that moves around in the last 10 nights. So this Laylatul Qadr, it's not a fixed number 27, or it's not a number 21, or a number 23, or a number 24. It's not one of these that's fixed, but rather it moves around from year to year. It's one of these nights, and it's within the last 10 nights of Ramadan, and we should seek for it within those last 10 nights, but it's not an actual like fixed one in that. And so this also it's a means for us to work hard within these last 10 nights. And of these things that's that someone can do while they're looking for Laylatul Qadr and looking to get this reward of someone, because someone who worships in Laylatul Qadr, it's as if you worship for 1,000 months. And of course, this is a huge reward. So as worship is multiplied, and standing in that night is like standing for 1,000 months. And so if someone does this in the last 10 nights of Ramadan, then this is something that they know for sure. If they got all of the last 10 nights and they did i'tikaf, then they were making i'tikaf for the last 10 nights. And this is something the Prophet ﷺ, he used to do i'tikaf in the last 10 nights, and this is something also his wives would do after him. And so this is a beautiful act of worship, and it needs to be done, and he'll mention here, there's two conditions, the main conditions here, and we'll talk about it. He says, Fasl, rahimahullah, he says, Fasl, wal-i'tikaf sunnatun mustahabbatun. And so he says, this is wal-i'tikaf sunnah, which is of course we know it's prescribed, mustahabba, and so this is something that's prescribed. The Prophet ﷺ used to do it, and something that's mustahab, like this is not obligatory in essence for someone to do this. And he says, walahu shartani, and so he says, and there's two conditions for it, and then he brings here, he says, an-niyah. The first one is niyah, because of course we have the hadith, innamal a'malu bin-niyat, that the actions are only according to their intention. So if you're in the masjid but you didn't intend the i'tikaf, then you're not going to get this reward even if you're there the whole time. You're not going to get the reward for the i'tikaf unless you intended it. And then also he says the second one is wal-lubthu fil masjid, and remaining in the masjid. And so these are the two conditions for i'tikaf, and it's just these two. And what if you notice here, he didn't mention any other conditions, such as that someone needs to be fasting the day before, the day of, or that they need to be of the other conditions. He didn't mention that it needs to be a whole night, and it can't just be a few minutes or a few, maybe half an hour or something. And all of this in the Shafi'i madhab, this is something that's okay for someone to do. If someone wants to make i'tikaf and they want to make i'tikaf from Maghrib to Isha, then this is fine. They can have the intention to make i'tikaf from when they come in to pray Maghrib prayer until when they leave for Isha. This is fine, and this would be counted as i'tikaf for them, as it's just for a period of time. And if they just they didn't even have a period of time in their mind, and they had an i'tikaf, they just wanted to make i'tikaf for however long they're in the masjid, this is fine. And then if they left and came back to the masjid, they would just and they wanted to continue their i'tikaf, they would just have to intend that they're doing i'tikaf again, as opposed to someone who intended to do a whole night or a couple nights and whatnot. Then if they left and came back, they would just pick up where they left off. Wallahu ta'ala alam. And so this is the view of the Shafi'i madhab, and this is of the most it's very open in this matter, but it does need to be in a masjid. So this is the Shafi'i view, is that a woman can't do i'tikaf in her her home, but rather the i'tikaf is something that's specific to the masjid. And so and this goes back to the ayah that Allah says, wa antum aakifuna fil masajid. And so the only time that we have the i'tikaf, or the aakifun, which is the person who's doing i'tikaf, fil masajid, and it's connected with the masajid. And this is something that happened from not just in this ummah, but also that came before. وَطَهِّرَ بَيْتِيَ لِلطَّائِفِينَ وَالْعَاكِفِينَ. And so that Allah told Ibrahim and Ismail to alayhim salatu wassalam, that to purify my house, or to purify, which is talking about the Kaaba, and for the people who are making tawaf, and for akifin. And akifin is the plural of the person who's doing i'tikaf. And so this is something that came from before, and this is something that was connected with the masajid. And this is the view of the Shafi'i madhab, that it's connected only to the masajid. So if a woman is in her prayer place in her house, then this would not be considered i'tikaf, but rather, yes, maybe it's an act of worship and whatnot, but it's not necessarily the i'tikaf that is known in the Sharia. It's different. And so the next thing he also talks about is he talks about i'tikaf for someone who has vowed to do something. Of course, if someone vows to do an action that is, like, of course, something that's mustahab, if they make a vow to do it, then this mustahab changes to wajib. And if it changes to wajib, then it kind of takes certain conditions as we would look at it as something that's obligatory. It would have conditions that wouldn't necessarily be there with something that's mustahab. So he says here, وَلَا يَخْرُجُ مِنَ الْاعْتِكَافِ الْمَنْظُورِ إِلَّا لِحَاجَةِ الْإِنسَانِ أو عذر من حيض أو مرض لا يمكن المقام معه. And so he says here that the person doesn't leave, a person who has vowed to do i'tikaf or vowed to do it, cannot leave the masjid except for something that is a human necessity or a valid excuse, such as menstruation or being sick due to an extent that one can't remain in the masjid in that condition. And so these are the things. So if someone made they made a vow, they said and that they made a vow to Allah. They said lillahi alayya and a'takif fil masjid ashra awakhir. And so if they said that I vowed to Allah that I'm going to make i'tikaf in the masjid for the last 10 days of Ramadan. And so if they made this vow, then they can't leave the masjid. Here where he says if they made this vow, they can't leave the masjid except for something that is a human necessity or valid excuse. And so, of course, like a human necessity, if someone needs to use the restroom, of course, we don't use the restroom in the masjid. We go outside the masjid to use the restroom. And also, like if somebody, they can go outside the masjid and use the restroom. And if the restroom is connected to the masjid, and they can leave the masjid and go to their restroom at home if they wanted to, and just without making any extra stops, or they can go to the restroom that's connected outside the masjid. But just another thing to be mindful of is that the masjid is not a place to use the restroom. So if you're and so this is something that is prohibited. One, we have a hadith that there's the Bedouin that went to the restroom in the masjid, and of course everyone got very upset about that, and then they washed it, and so like they cleaned the area and whatnot. So this is not appropriate for someone to use the restroom in the masjid. Yes, in the West we always put our restrooms inside of all of the buildings because we have a sewer system and everything. But you'll find that even if we have the sewer systems, like we shouldn't be going to the restroom inside of the masjid. So if we have a restroom that's connected to the masjid, we'd say it's connected to the masjid, it's not inside of the masjid. So the actual restroom doesn't have the hukum or doesn't have the ruling of a masjid. And also you'll find like in Islamic countries, they are aware of this. And so most of the time the restrooms will be disconnected from the masjid in a visible way. Like there will be like it'll be separated from, like there'll be an awning where the masjid ends, and then there'll be another awning that connects to where there's a restroom disconnected from that. So this is something to keep the restroom from the masjid. And if someone is building a masjid in America or in these other places, if they're building it from the get-go, they should try to have the restroom disconnected. But of course, like when people buy buildings in America, you buy it how it is, but the restroom is not necessarily a part of the masjid, even if it falls under it like in a property way. And so someone, if they went to use the restroom, that's why he says illa li hajatil insan. This is a human necessity. He means here this is like a kanaya for using the restroom, which is like a turn of phrase which is pointing to doing his business, like doing a person's business. And so, or udhr, and like for a valid excuse, such as menstruation. Of course, if she's menstruating, then I'm pretty sure we talked about it before at the end of the Bab al-Tahara, that she shouldn't stay in the masjid. So of course, if she vowed to do i'tikaf, and she's in the masjid, then her period comes, then she has an excuse to leave that i'tikaf, and then she would just make it up on another day, and whatnot. And so, and then she has an excuse though, so she has this excuse to leave. And the same thing also if someone's sick. If someone's sick in a way that they can't, he says here, لا يمكن المقام معه. So if he's sick in a way that he can't stay in the masjid, maybe he's sick, but it's a sickness where like it doesn't affect anything. He's just weak. He can't like move around a lot, but he's fine in the masjid. He has everything he needs in the masjid. Then in this case, isn't that something that stops him from his i'tikaf? But if he's sick, such as he has like diarrhea diarrhea, or he has like some issue where he can't like stay in the masjid itself, then okay, then he has a valid excuse here to go outside, to leave the masjid for that time that he can't stay inside there. And then he could make this up later. If it's something that he made the vow for, then he would have to make up that vow, so he could make up the vow, or at the end we'll talk about if someone breaks a vow that they made to Allah, then there's a certain like way to go about either they'll fulfill the vow, or they feed 10 people, or give clothing to 10 people, 1 mud, and so, or like they feed one person 1 mud, which is like it's a fifth of a gallon of food, and then, or they clothe 10 people, which is some type of clothing that is considered clothing, giving it to 10 people, or they fast 3 days if they can't do these first two. And so this is someone, if they break their vow that they made to Allah, then they do these things, and we'll talk about that in later chapters. It comes at the end of this book. And so, but this is for the person who made the vow to go into i'tikaf. Then he has these extra conditions that he can't leave unless there's an actual necessity. Also, if someone they eat outside the masjid, and that's where they eat, then they go outside to eat, and then they come right back, and they don't make any extra stops on the way and whatnot, but rather they go there and they come right back, and they don't go go out of their way to do extra things. Of course, if they see someone on the road, they can say, they give salams and whatnot and talk a little bit, but they don't go out of their way to go visit somebody on the road and whatnot, but rather they go straight to what they're doing if they're going to eat, and then they can come back. Such as if they're in Ramadan, they would go and they get their iftar, and then they would come back right away. Wallahu ta'ala a'lam. And also the last thing that he brings here in regards to i'tikaf is he says وَيَبْطُلُ بِالْوَطْءِ. And so this is something that it breaks intercourse, invalidates it. So of course if someone's in this, then intercourse invalidates us, and this is because of what Allah said, وَلَا تُبَاشِرُوهُنَّ وَأَنْتُمْ عَاكِفُونَ فِي الْمَسَاجِدِ. Then Allah says in Surah Al-Baqarah, وَلَا تُبَاشِرُوهُنَّ, and so he's talking about don't mubashara is kind of like a kinaya, which is like a turn of phrase, which is referring to skin touching skin, or which is which is understood here as a kinaya, or like a subtle way of saying something that is don't have intercourse while you are akifuna fil masajid, when you're in the state of i'tikaf. And so, of course, this is something that would break the i'tikaf if they did have this. And so, of course, someone's not going to do this in the masjid, of course. But if someone went home, say they went home to use the restroom or to eat, and then they can't, if they're in i'tikaf, then they can't have intercourse with their wife before they come back. That would break their i'tikaf. If someone was doing this mustahab, then they would break their i'tikaf, and then they would start it up when they go back. But it wouldn't be continuous, as a continuous i'tikaf. If they did this, it would break it, and then when they go back, they would have to start it up again. Wallahu ta'ala alam. Any questions about i'tikaf before we move on to the next chapter and book, actually? Yeah,
I have a question. So we have this new imam or president for the Islamic Center of Tacoma, and before he came in, we were allowed to sleep the masjid, no questions asked, nobody really cared. But he has this new ruling that you can no longer sleep in the masjid. I'm sure he has his reasons. I'm sure there's a perfectly good reason for it. I'm not going to question it, but my question is, this Ramadan, I really wanted to I didn't know this was sunnah, but I my first Ramadan, I slept at the masjid. I kind of stayed there most of the time. I spent most of my time there, and I planned on doing it again. Would it still count if I slept in the parking lot just because I want to follow the rules? Can I still fulfill this sunnah by sleeping in the parking lot? As soon as it opens, I come back inside the masjid. I don't do anything in between. I just sleep in my car. Masjid opens up, I go back in, and I spend the rest of the day there. Is that something that kind of is very questionable, or is that something that's based on intent? It kind of still counts.
If I would ask around. To be honest, I would ask around at the other masajid. And because I'm pretty sure that there's some masajid that are open to this, and if they're not open to it the whole Ramadan, they might be open to it at least the last 10 nights. Like I'm pretty sure there's at least a few that are open for the last 10 nights, and so if you can find that, that's better. Like then that leaves the area of difference. This is of course like, so when you would look at someone's intention, if they were to do this, and of course if they stayed from the beginning of Fajr, whenever they open up, and then they go all the way to the end of the night, and then they say you have to go. Of course, this person has an excuse here, and inshallah he'd be rewarded for what he did. But I would look for somebody though. If you can find a place that doesn't close, then see if you can do this. But at least for the last 10 nights, there should be multiple places. Even like here in Egypt, but I've seen it there before. And in Ramadan, the last 10 nights, usually a lot of the masajid will be open for people wanting to do i'tikaf. Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Assalamu alaikum.
Yeah.
Akil, you can come to Featherway, inshallah. We do it there.
Inshallah.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And did you have any other
no questions from me, alhamdulillah. It makes total sense.
All right, so inshallah we'll start with the next section here. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. So the author here, he says Kitabul Hajj, and so here he goes into the last of the of course like the pillars of Islam, and that we've talked about. Now we've talked about, of course, Tahara comes as a prerequisite, and then we talked all the way up until we got to the end, which was Kitab al-Hajj. And so we'll go over this today. We'll start up with it, and we'll probably have another lesson or two on it. And so, of course, Hajj in linguistically it means like intending to do something, but when it comes to like in the Sharia, it means like intending to go to like making the trip to go to the Bayt al-Haram, which is to go to the Kaaba, and also do all of the actions that are imposed or like that are enclosed in Hajj. So. And so the next, so when he talks about this, there's also another thing that will be encompassed inside of Hajj itself, which is the Umrah. And Umrah usually will be talked about inside of the same chapter as Hajj, and both of these are he'll talk about it here is when it becomes obligatory, but both of them are obligatory in the Shafi'i madhab, and also this is the opinion of many scholars, is that both of these are obligatory. So both Hajj and Umrah is obligatory, and this is because of what Allah says, وَأَتِمُّوا الْحَجَّ وَالْعُمْرَةَ لِلَّهِ. And so وَأَتِمُّوا الْحَجَّ وَالْعُمْرَةَ لِلَّهِ. And so if you are going to finish Hajj and Umrah, this encompasses like the beginning of it as well. And so also, of course, for Hajj itself, we have the ayat that Allah says, وَلِلَّهِ عَلَى النَّاسِ حِجُّ الْبَيْتِ مَنِ اسْتَطَاعَ إِلَيْهِ سَبِيلًا. And that for Allah, upon the people, على الناس حج البيت, and like it's upon the people to make Hajj, من استطاع إليه سبيلا, the ones who are able, for the ones who are able to make it there. And so of course we'll talk about the people who are able and whatnot in just a little bit, but of course this is something that is obligatory on people. We have Hajj and also Umrah, and there's other evidences as well for Umrah to see that this is also obligatory, but of course all of this is obligatory on the person who's able to do this. And there's many benefits from Hajj, and of them is that it brings together the ummah in a very visible fashion. Of course, like when Hajj happens, everyone from around the world can see that Hajj is happening, and they can see this like beautiful coming together of like many different people from all around the world, from many different nations, all coming together in one place to worship Allah in a way that is very unique, of course. And also it brings together like a sense of brotherhood, with all the people coming together in this and working through their differences and whatnot. Of course, like there's differences from this person, this country, maybe even languages. People don't understand each other. So of course we're right next to people that don't speak English, or they speak Arabic, and this person doesn't even speak Arabic. He speaks Urdu, or all these other people from all around the world. And so it's an amazing way that people come together. And this happens in Hajj and Umrah as well. And also this is something that brings, when someone goes into ihram, it brings them together in a way that is very interesting, in that they are all in the same, they're all wearing the same clothes. Like every single, whether this person's rich or whether this person's poor, they all wear the cloak on the top and the waistcloth on the bottom, and this is it, and everyone's on the same way. No one's wearing anything on their head. This is something that shows that when we're all worshiping Allah, we're all at the same level, when it comes to these material things, and we put these to the side so that we can worship Allah. And also it reminds us of what came before, and like the people that came before, as this is something that we're like them in this way. And this is something that goes all the way back, not just to this act of worship goes all the way back, not just to like to Islam, where we have the Prophet Muhammad, but it goes to the Islam of Ibrahim alayhi salam. And so this goes all the way back, and this was something that the Prophet Ibrahim used to make Hajj. And also this is of the Sharia of the prophets before. And so this is a beautiful reminder of what Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam, what he used to do, and that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam followed in his footsteps in this, of course, with the guidance that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam also gave us to make sure that this was everything was as proper and nothing was changed in that. And also this is a way of bringing wealth also to the poor people of Mecca. And so this is also of the benefits of Hajj, is that it brings wealth to the poor people of Mecca, especially in Hajj, when we have the people they're slaughtering. This meat goes to the poor people of Mecca. Like, so when people have these, they bring in these animals and whatnot, and then they slaughter these animals, whether they're doing tamattu', and so if they do this particular form, then they have to slaughter. And also if someone makes a mistake or something of this sort and they have to slaughter, this meat goes to the poor people. And also if someone wanted to go out of their way and do this as well, this goes to the poor people, and of course it helps those people. And also this is an act of worship that is, so we have acts of worship that involve our tongue, which is like, of course, coming into Islam, we bear witness, we take the shahada, which is something that is with our tongue. We have some things that are with our mind. We have some things that are like, such as salat, which is with our tongue. We say this and we move. But sometimes there are acts of worship that go out and reach more than just these things. And also, like if we were to give zakat, this is something that comes from us giving, like we're giving out, and this comes from our wealth. But Hajj, it comes from every single one of these things. It comes from both what you say, from the talbiyah, and to all the way to what you're giving out with your actual wealth. Because to actually go on Hajj, you actually have to put out a lot of your wealth to go out there and go there. I'm not for sure exactly how much it is now, but a lot of times it's around 10,000 or 12,000 for someone in America to go out and actually make Hajj. Of course, with a package and whatnot. And so like this, of course, it takes a lot of wealth to go out there, and also it takes a lot of like bodily like work. Of course, someone who goes on Hajj, it's very tiring, when they're going from one place to another place, and of course, there's no buses that are taking you from here to there. You have to walk all the way over there with the other people. So it's something that takes a bit of work with the body, and also going from Safa to Marwa, and also doing tawaf. This is all something that you're doing like a lot of bodily work, and it's heavy exercise. And this is something that all of this goes into the act of worship. So it's a very interesting act of worship, and it also is something that is like, you can see that the deen of Islam is something that is complete, and there's nothing missing from Islam, but rather Islam is complete, and it has acts of worship that encompass every single aspect of the human soul, and like the human body, and like even with with his wealth, and all of these things are encompassed in all of the acts of worship. And of course, this is something that also is good for someone when it comes to it comes to them like raising and working on their khuluq, like with their manners and adab with other people. This is something that, of course, like being in Hajj and being around this amount of people is definitely a test and a trial, and it's something that really makes sure that you are on your best manners with people. And also just in a general thing, if anyone is ever going to like Hajj or Umrah and whatnot, that they should always put khuluq in front of like mustahabbat. So if they have like something that is gonna hurt people, that they want to get to and do this because they see it's a sunnah to touch the black rock. Like if they see this is okay, this is sunnah to go touch it or kiss it, and so they want to go do this, but they're going to have to fight through a mass of people and like do like a bunch of elbow shoving and like harming a bunch of people to get to do the sunnah. This is no longer sunnah. This is actually like haram to hurt people. And so in this case, always put the khuluq and adab, put this before like these other things that seem to be sunnah, because if you're going to ever be hurting someone in Hajj or Umrah in this mass amount of people, never do this. Like stay away from this. And this is the act of worship that is prescribed, is never hurt somebody when you're going to do Umrah. If there's something you're trying to do in Umrah, of course, unless it's something that you have to do, but even then, try not to hurt anybody while you're doing this, and make sure that you're very, very respectful of the people that are around you, whether it's women, children, or older people and whatnot. Make sure that you're always respectful of the people that are around you, and this comes as like a first and foremost when it comes to the people that are around there. And of course, this is something that many people, they get there and they have in their mind the things that they want to do, and they don't care who's around them. They just want to do it. And this goes against of course we should be working with people and have the best of manners with them, and also work on purifying ourselves and getting close to Allah. And getting close to Allah never encompasses harming other people unnecessarily. So this is something to keep in mind as a general thing, and this is something that I've been to Umrah a couple times, and this is something you'll see some people that they have no khuluq, they have no manners when it comes to people around them, and this goes against how are you worshiping Allah while hurting your neighbors, you're hurting your Muslims. Like being good to Muslims around you is an act of worship that is obligatory, and going and touching a rock is something that's not obligatory, and if it's going to hurt other people, then it's could be a haram, and because of this because of the hurt that it causes other people. And so this is something to keep in mind. Now, coming back to what the author here he has to say with this this introduction here, and also the meaning of Umrah. Just for the meaning of Umrah is basically ziyarah, or it's like visitation. So Umrah is something that happens any time of the year, and Hajj has to happen within the certain days that at the beginning of the Shahr al-Hajj, Dhul Hajj. And so this has to happen within this first time, and the person has to make Arafah at that time. But Umrah can happen at any time of the year. It can happen all around the year. And so this is a little more open. So he says here, وَشَرَائِتُ وُجُوبِ الْحَجِّ سَبَعَةُ أَشْيَاء. And so he says that there's 7 conditions. There are 7 conditions for Hajj to be obligatory. And so he'll give these 7. And these were pretty much, if we've gone over all of these other conditions for something to be obligatory, as we talked about Salah, and also for Zakah, and also for Sawm. A lot of these, we'll see these first 4 things are the same for a lot of these. Which he says here, Al-Islam, that he's Muslim, wal-Bulugh, that he came of age, and he's reached that age of accountability. Wal aql, that he has his wits about him, that he's thinking, he's got his sanity. Well, hurriya, that he's also free, because of course this is the act of worship that encompasses money, and it encompasses that this person's going to have to pay for them to get themselves there, and so of course this has to do with money. So of course someone who's a slave is not going to be burdened with this. And also you'll see that slaves have a lot of leeway when it comes to the acts of worship. There's many acts of worship that slaves are off the hook, they don't need to do this because they have other things that are upon them. So there's a lot of things when it comes to of course we don't have slaves right now, but if we were to look at a slave in their actual tasks that's God for them to do, when it comes to Islam makes things a lot more easy for them when it comes to some of the things, such as a person who is a free person. They will have all of the things of Islam upon them, but a slave will have they don't need to make Hajj, and also like Jumu'ah, and there's many things that aren't obligatory on them just because of the fact that they're busy with that servitude. And that is from the justice of Islam when it comes to the rights of all people. And so also he says وَوُجُوبُ الزَّادِ وَالرَّاحِلَةِ. And so this is also the next thing, wujud, وَوُجُود الزَّادِ وَالرَّاحِلَةِ. And so he says here also for the for the presence, like wujud is presence, or but meaning that he has the means of zed, which zed is like the things that someone needs when they're on a trip, like the things that they're going to eat, like that they need on that. Warrahila, and this is like the actual means of travel. And so having the means to travel, whether it's from the food and the actual stuff that they need to get there, or like the money that they need to pay for the food when they're there, like having this, and also the means to travel there. So like having the ability to have a plane ticket, or or a boat, or however they're going to get there, they have the means to this in a way that's not like overly encompassing on this person. And also he says here with takhliyatut tariq, and so also that the road is passable, such as like you're not going through like someone's not going to like rob you on the way there, like in a way that's like, say you have like a person who's you have to go through a war zone, or you're gonna have to go through a very unsafe territory to get there. Of course, like in this case, this would drop the obligation for this person if the road is not passable in an easy way, or like in a normally easy way, of course. And also imkanul masir, and also like the ability to make the journey on time. So like if somebody they're not able to make the journey, and then like the Yom al Arafah, they're able to make the journey, but they need to be on Arafah at the, by the end of the day, they need to have been there, and so they haven't been there yet, and so they don't, even if they have the means to get there, but they don't have the means to get there in time, then then it's not obligatory for them this year, and so that's something also to keep in mind. And also they have to have the ability to, another one of the things that he didn't mention here, is they also need to have the ability to actually do Hajj itself. So if this person is an elderly person, or they have a disability, or they're not going to be able to actually do the actual actions of Hajj, they're going to be put into serious harm, or it's going to be very, 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 very difficult in a way that is unbearable. Like this is someone who's not able to do it themselves. So in this case, they themselves wouldn't have to do it. But if they have the financial ability to do it, then in this case they would send someone on their behalf to do this. And this is because they are, like, if they have the finances to do it, they should have it done. Whether it's from them or whether it's from someone doing it on their behalf, then it needs to be done. And so even if they aren't physically able to do it, but they can send someone to do it for them, then their Hajj would be sending someone to do it for them if they're not physically able. And this is something that is prescribed for them. And also just another note is, like, when it comes to like the ability to go there and like these things, this is something that of course the person, he knows best what he's able to do with his resources. And if he's going to go into debt to do this, he doesn't need to go into debt to do this. If he has outstanding debts that he needs to pay, then he should pay these debts first and foremost before he does this, and the obligation has not come upon him until he has the ability financially to do this. And once he has the ability financially to do this, and that time has come, then he is obliged to do this. And the madhab of Shafi'i, like the Shafi'i madhab, is that this person is not obliged to do it. Like, it's not like the first year he has to do it this first year, and if he doesn't do it this first year, he's able to do it, then he's a sinner. But rather, he has until his whole life, he has his whole lifetime to do it once. And whenever he does it, then he did what was obligatory upon him. Such as like if we have Salat al-Dhuhr. And so if we're going to pray Dhuhr, we have until the end of the time of Dhuhr to pray Dhuhr. And of course, Dhuhr, we know when the time ends. So of course this is something in general. We have the intention to make the salah, and we know it's going to end at this time, so we need to pray it before the time ends. But if this person was to delay it, and before he ended the time, like he prayed it before the time ended, but he delayed it, there's no problem with that, And so this is the same thing with Hajj, with the Shafi'i madhab, that if he delays it, there's no problem with him delaying it, but he should never delay it to a point where he's not able to do it again. So this is also, even if someone delayed it to a point where then they died, And then it became apparent that that last Hajj, is something that they had to have made. That last Hajj was the one that they had to have done, and them delaying it past that last Hajj is the one that they're sinful from. And this is the madhab of Shafi'i, is that this person is only sinful for that last Hajj that he missed, but the ones before that, him delaying it was not, he was allowed to delay it, but that last one he wasn't allowed to delay it. But of course none of us know when we're going to die, so this is a little bit problematic here. And a lot of the other scholars, they talk about like from other madhabs, they'll say that no, Hajj is ala fawr, like that this is something that needs to be done right away, and that no one should delay it, and if they're delaying it, then they're sinning, for delaying it. And Allah knows best. This is an area of difference of opinion. It's best to leave the difference of opinion, and when someone is able, they should do this, because they never know, maybe they're going to get sick, maybe when they have the money, then they're going to lose their money in the future, and it was already obligatory on them to make it at that time, and then when they lost the money later on down the line, they don't have the money, and it was obligatory on them, and so now they're sinful for not making Hajj. They need to make Hajj, and so that they don't know when they're going to be able to do this. So this is something someone should be mindful of. If they have the ability to do it, they should do it right away. And so the next thing that he goes into is he's going to talk about the arkan of Hajj, like the pillars of Hajj, and he'll also talk about the pillars of Umrah after that as well. And the pillars are very similar between the two. Like there's only one difference between Umrah and Hajj when it comes to the pillars, and that is the standing on Arafah. Like the Umrah doesn't have standing on Arafah, and Hajj does. And so we'll go over here. We'll go over some of the pillars, and we'll probably just briefly touch on some of the other things that are obligatory with that. And then the next class we'll go into Ihram, inshallah. So he says here, وَأَرْكَانُ الْحَجِّ خَمْسَةٌ and so he says there are 5 pillars to Hajj. And so the first of them is al-ihram. And ihram is, like the meaning of ihram is putting oneself into a state of making things haram that were previously halal for him. And so this is ihram, like dukhul, it's like entering something or a state of being that makes other things haram when normally it would be halal for him. And that's like linguistically, this is where it comes from. And also he says here ma niyah, which this has to be with the niyyah. And this is what the ihram actually starts with, the niyyah itself. It doesn't necessarily start with the person saying the talbiyah. It can be done without the talbiyah. Like this is something that is ultimately it's the niyyah, and it's also coming into that state of being which the person like he doesn't wear the same types of clothes that he was wearing beforehand. We'll talk about the conditions of the clothing that he wears, as well as like some of the other things that have to do with this. And this is very important that someone learns about ihram before they go into Hajj and Umrah, just so that they make sure they're not falling into things that are going to be problematic when they do this. And it's also important that someone learns about Hajj before going on Hajj, so that they're not learning. Yeah, of course, there's a way of learning on the way, but like going into and learning about this before going on there is very helpful. Someone should learn their religion before they go into Salah. They should know what are the arkan of Salah. What am I doing before I go into Salah? And so that they can actually do this. Of course, and many people, they will spend maybe thousands of dollars. They spend $10,000, $15,000 to go to Hajj, and they haven't even spent 15 hours to learn it. Like this is kind of ridiculous. Like if you could spend like five hours or 3 hours, or even 2 hours to learn a little bit about Hajj, you just spent like $15,000 to go, but you didn't even learn about it. Like spend a little bit of your time to learn about Hajj or Umrah before you go, because of course you're putting so much money out there. You would want this money to come back to you in forms of reward that's accepted from Allah. And so of course, like the actions for them to be accepted, they need to be done in accordance, of course, with niyyah, but then in accordance to the sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So of course, the first thing is ihram. And we'll talk about this. There's a chapter that goes about like what are the conditions, or like when someone comes into ihram, what is permissible, what is impermissible on them once they come into ihram. And this is with niyyah. And this also needs to be done at a certain place. So when someone goes into ihram, they need to do this at a certain from a certain distance of the he'll talk about this is of the obligatory things, but this needs to be done at the miqat, or like something that's at the same level as the miqat for that person person coming in. And normally if someone's on a plane and they're coming into Jeddah, they will say on the plane, when they're coming into Jeddah, they'll say, oh, we're going to come across the miqat in like 10 minutes or something. And then someone can make the ihram before that. Or they can make it when they say that. They can say it when they say it, but if someone's they're worrying about it, they can make it any time before then. There's no problem with making it beforehand. And of course it's sunnah to do it at the miqat itself, but doing it beforehand just to be safe, there's no problem with this. And this is easier for someone thinking that maybe I missed the miqat, and maybe they're forgetful and whatnot. So like I've seen someone who's asking, like, did I miss the miqat, or when did they say it, And so of course if he would have done it beforehand, he wouldn't have all these questions in his head of whether or not he said it in time. And of course there's a payment. If someone misses the miqat, they either have to go back to the miqat and come back, or they have to repay that with a sacrifice. And so the next thing that he says here, so that's ihram with niyyah, and I also mentioned it's at the miqat, and this will come in at the other things that are wajib. And so in Hajj, there's things that are called they're fard, or like pillars, and these are the things that you'll say that they're fard. And if someone misses this pillar, then his Hajj is no longer accepted. There's nothing he can do about it. Like he missed the pillar itself. And so this is like if someone missed the pillar in the salah, then this is like they missed the basic part of the salah. There's also in Hajj, then there's also the wajibat, and wajib is something that's obligatory, and if you miss it, then there's a price to pay, and there's the price that's a dam, which is blood, that someone has to make a sacrifice for this, and this necessitates a sacrifice, and this is for someone who misses something that's wajib. It's obligatory, but this word wajib is particular to the book of Hajj. And then there's also things that are sunnah, which is something it's good for someone to do, and they get a reward for doing it. If they don't do it, they're not necessarily sinful for that. And so these are the different categories of things. And so it's important for someone to know that the wajib here is different than the wajib somewhere else. In the fard or arkan, it means that this action is totally, like, if it's missing one of these, then it's not acceptable. This person has missed something that has made this thing unacceptable, and they need to do this action until they need to finish this action, or else their Hajj is not accepted. And so he says the second one here, which is al-wukuful bil Arafah. And so this is the standing at Arafah, and this is of course on the second. This is the Yom Tasa, like so the ninth day. This is this is something that needs to be done, on the ninth day, and the person needs to stand on Arafah. And this is also because the Prophet ﷺ said al-Hajj Arafah, and so this happens that this person needs to stand on Arafah from Dhuhr, from the ninth day, to Fajr of the day after that. So this person needs to be there they need to be there sometime within that time. So they need to have made it in that time. And if they don't make this time, this is the one thing that is time sensitive. And like there's some things that are time sensitive in Hajj, and this is the thing that's the most time sensitive thing. If someone doesn't make it onto Arafah during this time, from Dhuhr of the ninth day of Dhul Hijjah until Fajr, then this person has missed Hajj. And so this is the biggest thing that this person does. And if they miss some of the other things, they do it out of order, they can make up for it. They can figure it out. They have to, if they miss the tawaf and the other things that we'll mention, they can do this out of order. But of course, they need to first have ihram beforehand, and then they need to have made the wukuf. But if someone did these two, then the rest of it they can do it afterwards. And so he says here, and then the next thing after wukuf and bil Arafah, he says what tawafu bil bayt, and this is the tawaf al ifada. And so then also he needs to make tawaf. And tawaf in and of itself is an act of worship, and that can happen inside of ihram and outside of ihram, and it can happen for Hajj, and it can happen for of course for Hajj and Umrah. This is of the pillars, and it can also it can happen outside of these things. And there's multiple tawaf in Hajj. And so the one that is being referred to here is the Tawaf al-Ifada. And so this is the one that someone needs to do that is actually the pillar of Hajj itself. And of course, like the condition for tawaf is the conditions of salah. So we have that the person needs to have covered their awrah, and this is very important when someone is doing tawaf, that they're covering their awrah properly, which means that nothing is showing for the man, nothing is showing from his navel to his knees. From navel to knees, there should be nothing showing from like the belly button to the knees. Nothing should be showing from his body parts, because this is the condition for salah. And the Prophet ﷺ said that that tawaf is like salah, except that you're allowed to speak in it. So the Shafi'is, they take from this that all of the conditions of salah, they need to be in tawaf for the tawaf to be valid. And if any of these conditions fall out, then he needs to start back up that circuit. He needs to start back up that circuit from the number that he finished, that it was proper, and then he would finish it off from there. So this person needs to have tahara. So he needs to be on wudu, he needs to have wudu, and he also needs to have his awrah covered. He also needs to be free from any najis on him. And so all of the conditions of the salah, it needs to be there for him while he's doing tawaf. And sometimes you'll find people that when they tie their ihram, they tie it around just like as if it was a belt, and they don't cover up their belly button. And this is something that would cause the tawaf. One, it's haram to show this. This is something that this is the awrah of a man, and this is haram for him to show it without a necessity and whatnot. And so he shouldn't be showing this in the first place. And so this is one thing. This is part of the awrah from the belly button to what is at the belt line, and so this shouldn't be shown in general. And then for him to make tawaf or pray in this way, his prayer is invalid. His tawaf is invalid. So he needs to make sure that that what he's wearing, that cloth down at the bottom, that he needs to make sure that this is above his belly button, or covering at least the belly button, that line, all the way to his knees, and nothing should be showing from his skin from between these two things. And also, of course, and nothing should be and of course, this, the thing that comes over, the ridat, this is something that's okay, as long as he doesn't put it on his head. But this is a part of the shart of the actual awrah, but this is something else. And so this is the tawaf. And also, of course, everyone knows the direction of tawaf as everyone's going this, which is counterclockwise. And also that you would start from, of course, the black rock. You would start from this, and there's usually green lights that someone, if they're there, they'll see that there's a green light, and then they put the black rock between the green light, and that's where they start from. And then there's from that, you make a line from the black rock to that corner of the black rock to the green line, and that's where you start raising your right hand and saying Allahu Akbar, or Bismillah Allahu Akbar, and going and starting, and there that starts one, and you go all the way around, and then that starts two, and then you go all the way around until you finish the seven. And of course there's 7 of these, and someone needs to make sure that they count for themselves, and also counting, make sure that you count, because you're doing all of this. And if you're unsure of how many you did, say you're not sure if you did 3 or 4, then you build off of the 3. And so, if you're not sure if you did 6 or 7, then you did 6, And so, you'd the same way that we do with the arkan in salah, or the rak'ah in salah. If we don't know if we're on the 3rd or 4th, we say we're on the 3rd, and we build off of that. This is the same thing on the tawaf. So if you don't know which one you're on, if you know how many you did, you stick with what you know how many you did. And if you're wondering if you did an extra one, then you go to what you know. And so this is 7, and then after this, the sunnah is to make 2 rak'ahs afterwards. After you do the tawaf, then to make 2 rak'ahs, which is the sunnah to tawaf. And someone would pray 2 rak'ahs after this, and behind the Maqam Ibrahim, which is known, there's a place that sticks up, and then you'll find there's they have the Maqam Ibrahim behind that, and you don't need to do it right behind there, because of course if there's a bunch of people, this is not appropriate. As I mentioned before, making sure that you put people your manners before everything else when you're doing this. This is the most important thing. No one should be hurting other people or standing in the road, to pray there to salat. Find a place that is not harming people, and that you're not, of course, this is a huge it can be a huge issue. You have thousands of people like maybe 1 million people that are in a single place and they're all moving. So you stopping in the middle of this is ridiculous, and so this can cause serious harm for the people that are behind when someone just stops or a bunch of people just stop in the middle. And this is why, of course, they have like the government there. They have many people that are facilitating. So of course, like this is something to keep in mind. They facilitate for a reason, because there can be great harm that comes if people are not mindful of those around them, and they just do whatever they want to do without guidance. And so then there's 2 rak'ahs after that. And so going to the back behind that, like if you're in the general area or anywhere in the masjid to do these 2 rak'ahs, it's fine to do. But of course, like behind the Maqam Ibrahim, even if it's a little bit far behind, then this is good. And so then these 2 rak'ahs are there. Then after this, then one would go to do the next pillar, which is the sa'i, which is walking between Safa and Marwa. And so he says, وَسَعْيُ بَيْنَ الصَّفَا وَالْمَرْوَةِ. And so this is the next of the pillars that needs to be done. And this, like the condition for this to be done is, this is something that's particular for Hajj and Umrah. And so this is done outside. Tawaf can be done anytime, and it can be done at any time, whether you're, as I mentioned before, whether inside of the Hajj or Umrah or outside of it. It can be done at any time. Of course, if you're not wearing ihram, they won't let you down there in the first place. But this is something as an act of worship. You could do it on like outside, where they do let you walk around if you were to be there, like on the second level or whatever. If you wanted to go do tawaf, you can do it. Of course, it needs to be 7. It needs to have the conditions, but you don't have to wear ihram for your tawaf to be valid. You just need to have the conditions of salah and whatnot, and the conditions, and like have the intention to do that. But this is an act of worship. But a sa'i is something that is an act of worship that's connected with Hajj and Umrah, and it has to be after tawaf. So if you do the sa'i before tawaf, this is no good. It has to be after tawaf. And so, and this is between Safa and Marwa, and this is 7 laps, and each one is a lap. So I'm starting from Safa, you start from Safa, then you start from there, and of course they have, everything is gated, and they show you the area. And so you start up on this little hill, and then you come down, and you go up to the next one, and then this is one, and then coming back. And it's sunnah for people to make dua at the beginning on each hill, like when they come up and come down. It's sunnah for them to stop and make dua there. And of course, there's booklets that someone can get that like talk about the different dua that someone should make in these different areas. Of course, like reciting inna safa wal marwata min sha'airillah. So like reciting this ayah, this is something the Prophet ﷺ, he recited the ayah when he was there, like in a way of showing the people that this is like what they should be doing. This is it, and this is of the this is of the things that Allah has prescribed for Islam. And so some people have taken that this is sunnah to make this particular, like to recite this ayah, and other people have said no, this was something the Prophet ﷺ was not reciting it as an act of like dhikr, but rather he was teaching the people by reciting this ayah. And so and then there's many other dhikr for someone to make while doing this. So of course the talbiyah, labbaik Allahumma labbaik, this is something someone can do the whole time, whether on one of these, whether Hajj or Umrah, they can do this the whole time while they're on there. And so going from sa'i from Baina Safa wal Marwa, and so each one to the other side is 1. So 1, 2, or you have 1, 2, 1, 2, all the way back and forth until you finish the 7 on the opposite side that you started. And so this is the sa'i from Safa to Marwa. And so this is the 4th of the 5 pillars that he mentions here. And then the 5th pillar that he mentions here is wal halq, and this is like the cutting or the shaving of the head. And this can also be done like it doesn't have to necessarily be shaving. Shaving is the best. As the Prophet ﷺ, he said, he asked Allah to have mercy on the people who shave their heads. And then one of the people said, and also on the people who cut or like shorten their hair. وَالْمُقَصِّرِينَ. And then the Prophet ﷺ repeated the people who shave their heads. He's asking for Allah to have mercy on the people who shave their heads. And the Prophet said, also the people who shorten, like that didn't shave all of their head. And then he said the 3rd time, and And then after that, he said, and the people who shorten. So of course, like showing the emphasis of like shaving the head for this thing is something that is sunnah in this particular aspect. And normally, shaving the head is not sunnah. Like this is not a sunnah, except when it comes to the Hajj and Umrah. This is the only part that it's like prescribed for someone to shave their head, and also for the child who's born, for his head to be shaved after he's born, like as part of the aqiqah. The aqiqah itself, like the name aqiqah, is that hair that's shaved from that. So this is the other time that shaving is prescribed. But other than these two times, it's not prescribed for someone to shave their head in Islam. But this is of the times that it's prescribed for someone to shave their head. And if they didn't want to shave their head, say they like their hair a lot and they're not willing to, like they don't want to go all the way, they just want to do what's something that's less or like a minimum, then they just cut 3 hairs. Like 3 hairs is good enough for them to cut and whatnot. And this is also for like a woman. She's not prescribed ever to shave her head. Like this is the woman is never prescribed to shave her head. She would just like take a little bit and cut, like cut like 3 hairs, and this is good enough for her. And this also needs to be for if this is in Hajj, as you mentioned here, then this would also be after the day of Nahr, like after Laylat al-Nahr. And so this would have to be after that time. And there's certain things that should be done in order, and this is of the things that should be done later when it comes to these things. And so we're coming up towards the end here, and I'll talk about like Umrah is basically the same. Everything is the same for Umrah and Hajj when it comes to the arkan. And Umrah is very simple for someone to do. So they have ihram, they also have tawaf, as I mentioned it. They have the sa'i, going back and forth, and then at the end of the sa'i, then they have the shaving of the head or trimming. And once they do this, it's done. And like they've come out of the state of ihram, and then they're allowed to wear wear underwear, wear all the rest of the things that they want to wear. Then they can go back to doing this. And this is like Umrah. It can be done quickly. Like I've known people who do this in just a couple hours. Like they go and they like almost in the time of a layover. I know a brother who went and did in the time of a layover. He did all of Umrah and came back. Like rushing and trying to catch his plane by the last minute. But this is something someone can do. So Umrah is pretty simple for someone to finish all of it very quickly, of course, because they don't have to worry about like standing on Arafah. And there's a lot of other things that happen in Hajj that we'll talk about in the next class, inshallah, that are specific to that. But the things for Umrah, it's all of the things that I just mentioned here, like all of the 5 things except for standing on Arafah. And this is Umrah. And this and once this is done, then this person has completed Umrah. Of course, they can stay in Mecca however long they wish. And also, of course, the Salah in the Haram is multiplied by 100,000. And so this, of course, is a huge thing for someone while they're in Mecca, to make sure that they're very keen to go to the masjid and pray in the masjid, so they can get their Salah multiplied to the greatest ability. And so if they're there for just a small period of time, think of someone who's there for a week, and they pray their Salah in the Jama'ah in the Masjid al-Haram, then of course like this person's getting massive rewards, as if they've been praying for years, if someone's been there for a while. And so this is a beautiful thing, and a great chance for people to get close to Allah, and also to see where the Prophet ﷺ, where he was calling people at the very beginning. Of course, if someone's learning the seerah and they actually see the place that the Prophet ﷺ was in, this brings the seerah alive in a way that is like no other. And may Allah give us the ability to make Hajj and also to make Umrah many times. And may Allah make that easy for us, and grant us that love for the Bayt al-Haram and also for the Masjid al-Haram. Ameen.
وأمرت لأعدل بينكم الله ربنا وربكم لنا أعمالنا ولكم أعمالكم لا حجة بيننا وبينكم الله يجمع بيننا وإليه المصير.